Hello, and welcome to Knights of the Night Actual Play Podcast. This D&D adventure, The Heretic, was written and run by our DM, Scott. And now, please enjoy episode 474, titled, It Was That Third Beer. Actual play begins immediately.
Hello, I am Scott. I'm your Dungeon Master for this 5e adventure, The Heretic. With me tonight, on my right, are...
I'm Tom, playing Alderusha, human male cleric of the Life Domain, a member of the family that's long served the goddess Amira.
Hi, I'm Mike, playing Marduk, a male half-orc fighter and recent graduate of the Academy and new Fist of Amira.
I am Jim, playing Grodor. He is a weak male hobgoblin warlock from Dulgug, who is on a never-ending quest for knowledge and power.
I'm John, playing Melody, a female human cleric, the third of the exemplar family Harmony, ex-ambassador turned political operative.
I'm Thomas. I'll be playing Gabrielle De Angelis. She's a female human paladin and a holy maiden on a mission from Amira.
Last week, when we got together, we had the Fists of Amira wrapping up business in the capital city of Temerity. They went ahead and spoke to the quartermaster to get equipment. They went to the caravansary to get their horses and wagon and set off during the early evening from the city in haste. When they camped for the night, they did some hunting and were able to get some venison. And then in the morning after, they set off early and had, again, a pretty uneventful trip throughout the day as they passed caravans and farmers' wagons and regular people walking on the road the south way. Right towards the end of their day's travel, they came upon a battalion of warriors. There were a small group of soldiers blowing off some steam by practicing their axe throwing. They were accosted by a group of wood elves who came from the forest, asking them to cease and desist their damaging of the trees. There was a brief shouting match back and forth, and then the human soldiers went back to practicing with their axes. A warning shot was fired by the wood elves, one of which the arrows unfortunately struck a soldier in the neck as he was bending down to pick up his weapon. Our heroes got involved, jumped in between the two groups, did some healing, saved the soldier, and pretty much saved a larger skirmish breaking out. That's where we left off with the captain of one of the companies of the battalion speaking with the wood elves, trying to smooth things over after the player characters had already done so. Some of the heroes were invited back to the camp to stay as a guest of the captain for the evening, while others decided they wanted to pursue trying to spend a night with the wood elves in their camp to get to know them a little better and to see what they're all about. So that's where we left off. Who's heading to the battalion camp to be a guest of the captain?
I know I am, Alder.
Gabrielle was primed as well.
Marduk will stay with the camp. He will not go to the elves. I want to stick with the wagon and kind of keep watch on it because I still feel that we have a separate mission here, and this is a sidetrack.
It is, though, towards the end of the day where you would have been stopping anyways, just to be clear, so that you understand, unless you guys want to do a forced march and risk exhaustion.
I'm fine camping with our own forces, but at the same time, this is my internal monologue, so I'll just...
Okay, so you want to stay with the wagon.
I'm staying with the wagon.
Off the trail a bit, between the woods and maybe the south way?
Sure.
Okay. What about you, Melody?
I've lived around folks like this battalion. As long as Brother Byron's going there, I feel confident enough that I can make friends with these folks.
Okay. And that leaves us with Grodor.
These group of warriors, are they heading in the opposite direction we're going?
Yes, they are heading north.
Yeah, I probably would stay with the soldiers. I'm more comfortable with talking to them since my parents are in the military, and I may be asking them if they've been in that area. So I'd be asking them if they know what's going on that side of the continent and if they've heard anything.
Okay. So it sounds like everyone, with the exception of Melody and Brother Byron, is going to head to the camp, and with one more exception of Marduk, going to stay with the wagon and the horses kind of in between the two camps, if you will, for the night. So we'll start off with the battalion camp, and the sergeant who you were introduced to, whose name is Tavis. Tavis leads you through the myriad of tents and wagons and thrown up lean-to buildings really quick that are kind of put up each night as they camp. He leads you through the chaotic setup of camp to a very large, it's just a very impressive tent. It's probably somewhere around the lines of 10 to 15 feet high and maybe 30 foot long by 20 foot wide. It's the tent of the captain who you met briefly, whose name is Bran. And there's a fire pit out front where some cooks are putting together the meal for the night. And then next to this large tent, there are smaller tents, much like you would assume with an infantry soldier type of situation, where those infantry tents are set up, and Tavis checks in with a couple soldiers and then says, okay, your tents are ready for you. And your tents are right next to the captain's tents. And you can go and put your stuff in or get yourself acclimated if you wish.
And we can keep our wagon near here as well? I asked Tavis.
He smiles. You could. It seemed to me, though, that the large half-orc was taking your wagon to the copse of trees that you were just at to bear down for the evening. I believe he wasn't bringing your wagon with you here. So Tavis looks a little confused.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Let me know if I can be of any service whatsoever. Dinner will be served at the captain's tent at 6 bells.
I wander off of the camp and head back to the wagon. Hey, Marduk, what's up?
Alder?
Why are you setting up a camp? This takes time and effort when we can use what's offered to us.
I just felt that we should keep our business separate from where this army's going and the other ones.
Our business can stay separate if we just spend the night here. My intent is to potentially make friends that in the future, when we have something that needs to be done that requires a little more effort, we may be able to call for assistance.
Are you telling me to pull up stake and move the wagon back into the army lines?
I'm not in command of you. I'm just curious on what don't you trust of the army. I mean, we are the same organization, more or less.
If this is distressing, then I will begin and move the wagon back inside our army lines, but I will stay with the wagon.
I just don't like the fact that we are all separate. I mean, I understand.
I acknowledge the tactical situation, and I am complying with your request.
Okay. We are permitted to park it right next to the tent they set up for us. You can stay in the wagon or you can have your own tent. Your choice.
I choose to stay with the covered wagon.
And I choose to be by your side and make sure you're safe. As I always do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And so, Alder, you lead Marduk back through the, because he would probably have a tough time finding it if you didn't lead him back. So,
well, yeah, I help him pack up and then I ride with him.
I do have dark vision, and
You weren't also introduced to the tents that we were staying in, so I could show you exactly his parking spot.
And it's not quite dark yet. It's not quite 6 bells, which would be 6 p.m. in our lingo. It gets dark around 7:30, so you've got some daylight yet to burn. So you guys go ahead and do that. Alder helps Marduk pack up. And as you're walking back, Captain Bran actually falls in with you both. Okay. And he says, gentlemen, I just wanted to thank you once again for your help. Things are smoothed over. I believe we're in good stead with the Wood Elves. And that was a situation that could have completely got out of hand. I just wanted to thank you again for your efforts to keep things between the two sides calm and without bloodshed, any further bloodshed. And also the healing that took place was very much appreciated and unexpected. Again, my camp is your camp this evening. I hope you make yourselves at home and enjoy our hospitality.
Is this a particular army that is going to the front, where we know they were going to have the potential of conflict to the lawgivers?
Are you asking Captain Brand that?
No, I'm just asking what knowledge I would have of why they're here?
Yeah, great question. It would seem as if with Ascentia being invaded, that there's going to be yet another war between you and the lawgivers. And heading north to Harrow's Gate is probably so that it can help reinforce the defenses. There's also on the eastern side of the country a city and keep by the name of Morn Keep. That'll be another area that's being probably, you would imagine at this point, reinforced. A northern area, but on the eastern side of the country, that's being reinforced with battalions and legions to get ready for the battle. It doesn't seem unusual that a battalion of 1,000 men and women would be working its way north with war imminent.
Which is just something I want to know, because I say, Captain, I realize that you can't exactly tell us where you're going and what you're doing, because we don't need to know that. But my assumption is, considering the events that have been happening lately, you're probably headed toward possible conflict. And this conflict seemed unnecessary and unwanted. You're going to have hard times in the future, and the more men you have, the better. And the fact you don't have an enemy somewhere behind you is probably a good thing as well.
Yes, that's exactly our thought as well. We are heading north, that much I can divulge. And in doing so, we don't want to leave any bruised feelings or any chances of misunderstandings with those that are staying behind to guard our flanks and to guard areas that need to be guarded. The Wood Elves have a very important role to play. My men might not always understand that and think that they're just hiding out in their forest, but nothing could be further from the truth. The forest is an absolute integral part of our defenses, and the Wood Elves who patrol it are crucial to the safeguard of our nation. By avoiding that, you did a good thing today.
It's always good to have someone that could watch your back. I hold out my hand and offer him a handshake.
He crisply shakes your hand and says, agreed. At that point, he says, I will meet you at my tent. I need to stop by and speak to the sergeant of the men who were not behaving in a professional, soldierly manner today. I will be back shortly to join you for dinner, so please excuse me. And he peels off to the side and bids you both. He was, even though you weren't talking, Marduk, he was making eye contact with you as well and speaking to you every bit as much as he was speaking to Alder. Alder, you lead Marduk back to the area where the tents are located. Marduk, there is a area that's available for you to park the horses and the cart. You start getting them fed. And is anyone else doing anything at this point besides getting situated in their tents?
As we're packing into our tents, I ask Rodor, you got anything else you want to do in this camp besides just settle down and read your book some more?
I was going to go just see if I can get any news about what's going on to the east over toward home, toward Tholgug and Torisk.
I wanted to figure out the nature of the discipline these men will receive will show us what kind of leader this Captain Bran really is. So I'm going to investigate as to that.
Okay. Tavis comes up to Grodor, who he heard you speaking to Gabrielle, and says, actually, this is the 7th Battalion, and we are located out of River Redoubt. If you're not familiar with it, we're actually almost directly to the south of where we're at currently, by Hammerholm in the hills of southern Amira, is what Tavis tells you.
This still might have news of the roving wilds, which peripheral, but it still might give us some information.
In regards to the roving wilds, things were calm when we left, which I think occasionally in the spring, usually, we get a little bit more activity and a little bit more conflict with the roving wilds. But we're pushing into fall. They tend to be doing more of their harvest festivals and gatherings, and it tends to be a little less dangerous for our armies and battalions to have to take care of. So it was a good time for us to head north.
Okay. That's good information.
Okay. I think at this point we'll say that Marduk and Alder return.
Marduk, so we unhook the horses and brush them down to make them comfortable and taken care of?
I'm accustomed to caring for the animals, so I can take care of that.
Well, there's two, so I'll give you a hand.
Alder,
Yes. What is it, Gabrielle? What do you need?
do you know anything about the discipline that these men are like to receive? Who I might talk to find out about that? Or
It sounded to me like Captain Bran was going to talk to the sergeant that was in charge of them. And I don't know whether to scold the sergeant or have the sergeant scold them. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it's all about who your commander is. I mean, that's what I found out in my family.
I don't want to compromise the judgment he'd give. Having a hand of a mirror over his back is going to affect how he'll act. Can anybody shadow him without him seeing? I know this is a lot to ask, but I think it's an important thing to know before we go making friends.
Potentially. I could wander over there and I
know quite a bit about animal care. I can take care of the other horse in your stead.
Good enough. I have the ability to fade into the background pretty well.
In matters of discipline like this, we might want to be careful, since I'm sure they're going to make it a public dressing down because they want to send a message to everybody that this is not appropriate.
You might be right, but if he does it differently, I want to know. Alder, I already trust you with this, but please.
I can absolutely take care of that, and I was taking care of Chestnut, so I just hand over the reins.
Gabrielle, do you fear something will happen?
He could have been putting on a front. We are, despite our relative youth and inexperience, suddenly very important members of Emiran society. Our judgments can go a lot farther than they used to. All right, I'm not screaming this. Sorry.
Mm-hmm, sure. We're whispering it as we're taking
character like that.
So Tavis is not getting in on this conversation.
Right, no. I'm doing my best to be quiet about this.
Oh, I thought Tavis was already gone.
He was, but he's standing at attention not too far away. So you have to talk in lower voices if you don't want him overhearing your conversation.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood that.
My bad.
I would not have asked that out loud.
Well, we'll just say it was quiet.
Okay.
It could be this lack of discipline is not just first deployment, camping in the middle of nowhere jitters. It could be that his lack of action in the past has led to this. Kind of want to know what kind of leader he is before we say, let's have this man in our pocket when we go to war.
There's 1,000 men and women here. It's
because
difficult.
That judgment of him
Understood.
Will reflect on us if he turns out to be a less than exemplar individual.
I understand that. But he's the captain, and he's in charge of hundreds of men and women here. There's no chance that he can babysit all of them and affect them. But I do understand why we want to see how he acts to us is differently than how he acts in reality. And I can check that out. Let me see what I can see and hear what I can hear, and I will be right back. And I slip into the tent because I want to avoid Tavis seeing that I am kind of ducking underneath the back end of it and wandering off into the camp. And I rolled a total of 17, which was 12 plus 5 in stealth.
Okay. You slip off easily without being detected. You know the general area that the captain was going to, based on the fact that he peeled off at a certain point. And we'll say, go ahead and I'm going to throw two together that aren't normally together. A charisma investigation check. You're not using intelligence so much as you're using your personality to gather gossip and news about what happened, because gossip is running rampant right now through the camp based on what just happened.
I rolled a natural 20 for a 24.
Wow, that's impressive. What you're able to gather through talking to several different people and following in the footsteps of the captain, who just laid out the discipline and walked away from the sergeant. And then the sergeant's talking to the men, and then the men start talking to their friends. And so it scatters like wildfire. And you get right into the tail end there where it's just coming hot off the presses. What ended up happening was both the sergeant and his men will be on latrine duty for 10 days. That's their consequence for having not followed the proper etiquette for when you're making camp for the night. They went off on their own without any guidance and caused damage to property because of the fact that someone got hurt, he pulled back, it seemed, a little bit from what the consequence might have been, because someone actually almost died, and decided that crummy duty for 10 days is what their consequence will be.
Okay, with that knowledge, I wander back and, again, enter the back of my tent and then come out of it as if that's where I was the entire time.
Right. And that will then take us to the arrival of the captain. So you get there almost at the same time he does after gaining the information, as he stopped to talk to a few people and press some hands and get some reports and some updates as he was heading back to his tent. And it is almost 6 bells at that point. So does anyone in that camp want to do anything before dinner at 6 bells?
I'm going to assist however I can with either the making of the food or setting the places where we're going to eat, just to be a helpful hand out there and to get around and to talk to people and such. And
Sure. There are guards standing outside the tent where you'll be eating, the captain's tent. Access to there isn't really readily available, but the cooks who are cooking around the campfire can absolutely use an extra set of hands making the dinner that they're making. You're able to kind of just work yourself right into their group and help with dinner. And I'm going to swing over really quick to Wood Elves. You and Brother Byron wait politely for the captain to finish speaking to the group of Wood Elves. When he is finished, they come over to the grove of trees that were damaged, and Vidania goes up to the trees and she starts whispering and she starts putting her hand up to them, and her hands start glowing with a white light. She's praying softly and healing the trees, while the other 4 wood elves, the captain, which was Aranis, and the other 3 are not sure, they never introduced themselves, are talking amongst themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, Brother Byron kind of looks at you and says, you talked to them before. Do you want to talk to them again? I'm gonna go see if I can talk to the girl.
Okay.
So he peels off and goes and talks to Vidania as she's doing her healing. And you walk up to Aranis?
Aranis was the leader who was not impressed by my symbol before.
Well, he wasn't disdainful, but he wasn't wowed by it, I guess, is the point.
Okay. I don't want to overstep my boundaries here, but there is likely to be more folks traveling up here who don't know your ways, and I wanted to give you a heads up.
The battalion of army men have given us their word that they will not interfere anymore.
I'm sure they won't.
With our land.
I don't think they're going to be the last. They are representative of a war. I don't know how much news you folks get in there, honestly, but the lawgivers are making their way south again. I'm making my way to my homeland to see if we can find some way to slow them down, but on the way we happened across you folks, so I thought I'd give you the heads up. I know they've never made it this deep, but things are looking grim this time, so I figured a warning would not be...
We are sheltered in the wood, but not without information, as we are responsible for the protection of the wood. And when the lawgivers cause war, it causes us to pain as well and suffering. So we are preparing, but I do appreciate your words of warning, as I'm sure other groups of soldiers will be traveling through as well. Some of them ignorant of our ways and our rules. Go ahead and make a persuasion check just to see how the conversation's going with him. It seems to be going pretty good, but I just want to see if he opens up more or if it's just the way it is right now.
I've rolled 17. 12 plus 5.
He seems to be conversing with you. Before, he was almost dismissing you with his words. He was obviously much more worried about the soldiers and what they were doing to his beloved trees. Now he seems to be actually having a conversation, and although his common is a bit halting and not super clear, he seems to appreciate
He doesn't need to be
what you
speaking
did.
in common. We spoke earlier in Elvish.
He probably just fell into that just
Habit.
out of habit because you're human.
Okay. Then I will ask, Well, the folks who live here, unlike this battalion traveling through, are understanding of how to properly revere this region. I'm from out east. We don't hear much about this, so if you folks wouldn't mind a little bit of a primer on what this weald is about.
This weald is a sacred weald. It is a sacred forest of Amira. It literally grew from her tears when she first stepped upon our sphere. And every tree within it is sacred. And we believe every stone, every small stream, every river, every hillock, every part of the reverent weald is sacred to Amira and therefore sacred to us. So any damage to it whatsoever is an affront not just to us, its protectors, but also an affront to Amira herself. And we take that charge very seriously. And we will not abide any damage to her sacred wood.
It's understandable, especially as it's her first coming to this world. She created everything, though, no?
She did, but this land was plains, like the land you see to the east. So in what he's speaking to, he points over to across the
Honeyed plains.
The South Way, the road, and the honeyed plains are there to the east. And he said this area was all plains until she wept her tears when she saw what the Rune Lords had done to our sphere. So this wood is a newer wood, and it is highly charged with magic. It is highly charged with her essence. And again, we are its caretakers, and we will let no affront befall it.
I spent my early days just downriver from the Cinderwold. That was where the Ruin Lords first set down, so I too have felt the impact of those ages and can understand the reverence for them. Those fires still burn there. It's understandable. The tears and the sympathy she felt when she came down.
Yes,
I just
indeed.
wish I had a similar thing growing up nearby. Instead of just destruction and ruin, I could have had something like this.
It is a treasure for the whole country. It is truly a blessing that we have this, and I feel for your pain for the Cinderwold. We are familiar with its name. Some of my elders have even traveled to that spot, and we have had druids who have tried to heal, but the magic is just too evil. It is too powerful, and it seems as if it cannot be healed, and that is sad. Because any creation of Amira's that is tainted and disrespected and changed from how she made it, how she sculpted this sphere, is a tragedy.
That's some food for thought. We live in cities. We change the earth. That's not necessarily in line with how you worship. But it is inevitable. Even without civilization changing the face of things, nature changes itself.
Yes, there is change, but there is corruption. The Cinderwold is pure corruption. It is not a natural change with the seasons that Amira intended. It is evil and filled with despair.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think I'll try to find some lodging for the night. If I have to go back, I can do that. But I need to check up with Brother Byron before going.
Brother Byron is now, the healing has taken place, and now he's just conversing with Vidania. She seems to be very shy, but yet can't help herself. She keeps speaking and then blushing and then taking a step back and then stepping forward and inadvertently like touching his hair. Like it seems very, very obvious that this is the first non-wood elf she has ever met. And she is absolutely enthralled by Brother Byron. They're having a pleasant conversation. It seems as if her common is more halting, much more halting than Aranis's, but they seem to be communicating just fine because Brother Byron can slip into Elvish and speak in Elvish with her. He doesn't quite have her Wood Elf dialect down, but they managed to communicate just fine.
I think I'll ask if it was her that went to the Cinderwold.
She turns to you, smiles widely. There's like a sparkle in her eye, and she says, I have never been farther from the wood than I am right now.
Do you believe it can heal?
I believe Amira is more powerful than any evil. Okay, Mel, anything else that you wanted to gain?
I just want to make sure Brother Byron has a place to stay tonight. Don't know that the Wood Elves will be housing us. We might make our way back to the regular camp and ask around until we can find where we hitched up the wagon, pitched a tent.
Right. Brother Byron smiles widely and says, well, apparently Vidania has already invited us to stay for the evening.
Okay.
And she blushes again and says, I must speak to Aranis, but you are good people. And she steps away for a second and goes and talks to Aranis. Aranis looks perplexed for a second, but not angry. She steps back, maybe no more than 30 seconds later. Pretty quick conversation. And she says, yes, you will stay with us.
Thank you. I'm sure Brother Byron says similar.
Yes, absolutely. He's very interested in just learning more about these Wood Elves and learning more about what they do within the Reverent Weald itself.
Okay. I think we'll stay there for the night.
Okay, so you guys all start at this point heading into the woods. And we'll break there and go back to the camp. You hear the ring of 6 bells, everyone. Sergeant Tavis leads you into Captain Brand's tent. And there is a long table there that could seat probably upwards of 10 people at one time. It could be used, obviously, for strategizing. It's also used for feasts and meals. Captain Brand is at the head of the table. It's just you and him for the evening and Tavis.
You said that there's a table where they have plans or maps or...
You would assume that that's what it's used for. There's no plans or maps on it right now. It's obviously been cleaned up for dinner.
Okay.
But as you look around, you can see all kinds of scroll cases and books on some impromptu bookshelves that are put together quickly just for the night.
I look at any of the titles. Is there anything of interest or note maybe involving Tarask?
Go ahead and make an investigation check.
I have an 18.
You find one book that deals with what's known as the Last War. The Last War was about 70 or 80 years ago. And the lawgivers broke through Morn Keep in eastern Amira and made their way all the way to Iron Sword Pass. The battle was fought around Tarask. Eastern Battles in the Last War is the title of the book.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Captain Bran invites you all to sit. There are people coming in and out of the tent continuously, whether it be people giving him updates or whether it's the soldiers who are the cooks bringing in food. Tonight is beef stew, apple tarts, and a Pilsner ale. It's a robust dinner, and you are all allowed to take your seat. Over dinner, he thanks you guys again for your efforts in avoiding the bloodshed that could have taken place, or again, did sort of take place this afternoon, but could have been much worse. He apologizes for the recklessness of his men, indicated that the sergeant and his men were both reprimanded with some not too pleasant duties over the next 10 days or so. He appreciates how your efforts in calming the Wood Elves and his men specifically leave the country in a good place. It could have been a situation where some distrust or some strife could have occurred between the two factions, and that would be really unfortunate. We want to leave our flanks and our interior as strong as our borders, and I really appreciate your efforts to make sure that happened today. And then he opens it up for anything you guys want to talk about after he says his piece.
So over dinner, I would ask is if there's anything we need to keep an eye on or anything they've seen south of here before we start heading.
If there's dangers out here in these honeyed plains, which I personally doubt, you surely would have met it.
Oh, absolutely. What we ended up seeing was nothing but clear roads, typical civilians, farmers, merchants, caravans, from where we were all the way up north. Conversely, I'll ask you guys, how is Temerity? I hear there's a refugee problem. So our forward scouts are telling us there's a refugee problem. What's that like?
You'll be able to see the gathered refugees to the north of the city before you make it to the walls. There are many of them. They've created a small district out there before we manage to bring them within the city itself, because the city itself cannot house all of them.
Hopefully the High Exarch can get them into camps and tents and clear the way, because we need that northern road as we head to the north. It'll be important for us to get through without too much delay, but I'm sure they're working on something, and it'll be taken care of.
And I'm assuming that if they're pulling you from the south, there isn't any dangers of the size of an army.
We already asked, me and Grodor, as it sounds, the tribes of the roving wilds are settling down for their harvest ceremonies and gathering up their supplies to last through the winter, which are none too kind to them. Unlikely to cause a big enough problem. A good reason to move those troops to the north.
Captain Brand chuckles. He's like, you guys should be part of our scout team with all the information you've gathered from where we came from, where we're going, and the nature of the threat from the south. He smiles again and chuckles.
We are a limited number of people, and we have to be careful of those we travel through and have to deal with, so it is not unusual for us to want to know about the political nature and the people that we're going to be traveling through.
Amira's fists must not be idle.
Indeed. The ringing for 7 bells occurs. Dinner gets cleared away from the table. He lights a pipe and starts to smoke it. He's still open for questions if anyone has any.
Yeah, it's time for the deep ones.
Yeah,
He's lit his pipe.
Yeah, he's lit his pipe indeed. I guess maybe it's just some banter if you guys don't have direct questions.
I do have some questions about the other captains and the colonel. Just names, because as someone whose mother was a part of the royal court, I'm curious if any of these names are familiar. I probably don't know them, but I may know of them.
He tells you that the overall command, the colonel, is Drenna Hotspur. She's a dwarf from Hammerhome, and she's the overall colonel of the entire battalion. There is a half-elf that is a captain like himself by the name of Yarvis Penletter. He controls one of the 4 companies. The other is a female human by the name of Vola Trent, and she's another one of the captains. And then last but not least is a half-elf by the name of Simmer Ishta. That would be the 4th captain of the various companies that make up this battalion.
And I did roll a history of 10. Not likely that I would know or have met any of these personally.
No, the name Hotspur, though, does strike a bell with you as the colonel. The Hotspur clan is a relatively large clan in Hammerhome, so you are familiar with the clan name, if not any individuals from the clan.
They hold this post generationally, just because they are of a martial sort.
Make a history check.
10 answers that. Fair enough.
No, it didn't.
History. Let's go.
You can still roll better than... Oh, you did.
Yeah.
A little better. You've definitely heard the name as well, Gabrielle, the Hotspur name, and you have heard at least one other military commander besides Drenna. You can't quite place the first name right now, but you know Drenna's not the only Hotspur commander in the Amiran army.
I haven't read that many history books. I'm only going to have to check a few, and then I'll know it. Gabrielle holds that information, because it doesn't sound too intelligent if you say that out loud.
But since I did recognize the colonel's clan name, I might bring it up and try to get more information on that.
Well, go ahead and make a persuasion check to see how much he reveals. Oh, nice.
19.
You're able to find out that Drenna Hotspur has been at this post for nearly 10 years. He doesn't say this in so many words, but she seems to have reached the apex of her command. She is a colonel and that is where she is going to probably stay after a decade of being entrenched in that position. You get the idea that she is very serious. There's not a lot of levity in her command. Her captains follow suit and run a very tight ship. They're considered a very serious battalion by their contemporaries in the military. By the book, very standard type of battalion.
But I tell Captain Brand, I understand that there are roles and you have to follow them, but you seem a very reasonable man, a very caring man for your men.
I don't necessarily think that serious and caring don't go hand in hand. I think Colonel Hotspur cares for her troops. I think she feels that by being studious and following the rules to a T, she best serves them, to care for them and make sure that nothing bad happens to them. She's serious, but I still get the feeling from working with her for over the last couple of years that she does really care about her charges.
And never a bad thing.
Never.
This is slightly unrelated, but this probably came up in any history book. How did the last war end against the lawgivers? Did we stop right at the border of Essentia and send them packing? Did we chase them to their capital?
The invasion of the lawgivers in the last war broke at Iron Sword Pass.
Right.
That's where they threw everything they had into breaking through what would be the southern side of the land of Amira, because they couldn't break through Harrow's Gate. They just were unable to do so. But they broke through the Morn Keep and came down and raised Lake Redeem and continued south. They never quite took Vellum.
Too independent, even for them.
They occupied Tarask and Travail, and then they broke upon the vaunted fortress of Iron Sword Pass. Actually, as conversation is winding down, Captain Bran asked if you'd like to go to the fire and have a drink.
A drink?
Yeah, like another beer.
Easy there, Grodor.
One should always take well-earned opportunities to indulge, but never to excess.
No, it hasn't. It's been dinner, so you probably had one or two maybe with dinner.
Yeah.
This would be your third.
On full stomachs and with good rest, surrounded by the safety of the Soul Guard. I think it's safe.
And who normally hangs at the fire, Captain?
A couple of my commanding officers. You've met Tavis. Usually when we have guests, we tell a story around the fire. We let them know we are the 7th Battalion, and we're proud of being the 7th Battalion. We like to let our legend be known to those we meet for the first time and who have never heard the legend before, which I'm assuming you may not have heard the legend of the 7th Battalion.
Well, then I think this is a good time to hear it.
He grabs his beer, steps up. Come on, Tavis. And they walk outside the tent, followed by the four of you. There are chairs situated around the fire. Captain Brand sits down. He starts talking about the last war and how the fall of Morn Keep, north of the eastern side of Amira, was just devastating. It hadn't fallen in several hundred years. It was shocking. And then Lake Redeem fell. That was another very hotly contested battle that did not go our way. Luckily for us, the lawgivers split their legions. One legion went to the east to conquer Vellum, and the other legion went to the south to tackle Tarask, Travail, and then eventually to the gates of Iron Sword Pass itself. The 7th Battalion was at that battle, and we were in reserve. We were on the right flank of the Legion, and the right flank crumbled. It was attacked by a vanguard of nearly 1,500 wargs and their riders. Just crashed in to the right side of our flank, and our flank was just ripped apart and torn apart. And our commanders gave the order, and into the fire went the 7th Battalion, 1,000 strong, against over 1,500 wargs and their riders, not to mention the wyverns that were assaulting us from the sky. And in that battle, we stood firm. And those wargs were stopped cold. They broke on the backs and the swords and the crossbows of the 7th Battalion. 800 of the wargs fell in 1 hour of battle, as the 7th Battalion then pushed forward with more reinforcements, forward even more, encircling the legion of lawgivers. The lawgivers lost an entire legion that day due to the bravery of the 7th Battalion, which I am proud to be part of to this day. And he takes a huge swig of his Pilsner when he finishes telling the story.
Yeah, I'll take a swig.
Excellent.
How long ago was this? Was this the same 40-ish years ago?
The battle that he just described?
Yeah.
Probably about 74 years ago or so.
74. So he's proud to be in a historic battalion.
Yes, he wasn't actually at the...
Actually. All right, so
right.
yeah, I'm just...
He does point out that it was a Hotspur that led the 7th Battalion that day.
And their name was... And Gabrielle tries to come up with it again now that this has jogged her memory. Let's see what she's got. 16.
Another woman, Hotspur, by the name of Grenda.
Grenda. What a commander.
Yes, Grenda ended up leading the 7th Battalion for nearly 50 years. She's a legend in our ranks.
Well, I'm sure she must be. After that battle, I know we managed to push them all the way back to Mornkeep, but I don't recall my lessons.
Not everyone is a military history expert. I can say that we destroyed one entire legion that day. We then went on the offensive, and the 2nd Legion that was in the south at Iron Sword Pass, we were able to overwhelm in a brutal 2-week conflict that broke the entire army and had them fleeing back all the way through our territory back to their own through Essentia. We killed as many as we could, but many did escape. That left the 1 legion that was sieging Vellum. They were forewarned, unfortunately, and fought a fighting retreat to our border, taking some serious damages along the way. Were able to escape into Essentia. We followed them to start liberating Essentia. So we also took off from Harrow's Gate in the northwest and forged into Essentia and fought battles in southern Essentia to push the lawgivers all the way back to their home territory.
All right. My question, though I do not besmirch the wisdom of our elders, for mercy is its own reward, were we right to have stopped at their borders? They worship Asmodeus. Their way of life is always going to be antithetical to ours. How do you feel having to fight this war again, knowing that you might need more heroics out of your men? Were we right to have stopped at their borders?
I don't believe it was a case of stopping at their borders. I believe
they had army.
Overextended themselves. They didn't have the manpower to fight us off. However, there were still quite a few legions on their home turf. It would have been probably a bridge too far to take it to their home. The cost would have been monumental. It was decided by the High Exarch at that point to celebrate our victory, to celebrate the freeing of Essentia and Salice.
The work we had accomplished.
And to just to lick
all of that.
Our wounds and go back to where it was at.
That was, I suppose, my ignorance. Like I said, the wisdom of our leaders of the past, well, certainly not without question, is certainly more than mine.
There were decisions made to save lives, and it's worked for 74 years. There hasn't been another war.
I lived during that peace. It was delightful.
Nearly 4 generations as the humans see it. It's been a good peace.
All right. Thank you for the lecture.
Anytime I can talk about the 7th Battalion and the victories of the forces of Amira, I'm pleased to do so. It was a very pleasant evening, and I hope you'll enjoy the extended hospitality of a tent to sleep in and breakfast in the morning before you're on your way to whatever challenges you face, which I'm sure are momentous. Captain Brand bids you good night, says he must be up before dawn, so he must make an early night of it. Tavis stays at the fire, though, a little longer. He wasn't quite finished with his beer, so you don't have to immediately disengage if you don't want to, but you could.
I've got performance all trained up and such, because one of the things my uncle taught me is always enjoy your party. So I'm going to go out with a song.
What's it about?
It's definitely about the Reverend Weld, just because that's what she's thinking of. Probably it's traditionally Elven, and she might not even be able to speak the language properly. She just knows how to sing it.
Okay.
Because their prayers are less hymnal and more
free verse.
Something you could dance a jig to.
Yeah, free verse, right?
Yeah, free verse. They're trying to reflect the good times that the forest offered them.
Okay, is she singing it?
Yeah,
or is she playing it? Does she have an instrument or no?
She doesn't actually have any training in any instrument.
Okay.
But maybe just some basic drumming to keep the beat.
Sure. Okay, go ahead and make a performance check.
Not the best, but I am trained and I am not bad at charisma, so normal roll. Oh, man!
Wow.
I rolled a natural 20, and I have a +4, 2 for charisma, 2 for performance training.
You're definitely feeling it tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I think it might have been the beer.
Yeah.
Everybody's feeling it.
It was that third beer.
Yep,
that,
must have been.
We offer up to Amira in our
So, at the campfire, at the captain's tent, you sing a song of the Reverent Wield. You sing in Elfish, and it is haunting and mesmerizing. And actual other soldiers are kind of coming up to the fire because it's a longer song.
There are bits, like a chorus bits, that are in common that regular people can sing because it leads to a greater crowd melody, which is part of the prayer's intent. Some reason for them to all gather here.
Absolutely. You get a crowd of probably 15 to 20 soldiers who are just kind of moving through from one part of camp to another. You end up gathering up a group of people, and it was really meaningful. And they realize they're going past a very impressive woodland that has significant meaning to their country. Mm-hmm. And although they might not feel about it the same way that the Wood Elves feel, they can still get emotional about the Reverent Wield and its import and history behind it of being from the tears of Amira herself.
Yeah, I think part of the lesson is just that her sadness brought forth all the happiness of the country of Amira itself, because we wouldn't have picked this spot to settle down without her setting foot here first. I think that's how the myth goes.
Tavis tells you not everyone is turning in just yet. We do have, by 10 bells, everyone needs to be in their tents, but the 8th bell is just rung, so there's still a couple hours left before bed down. There's other things. There's other fire pits. There's other areas of the camp that you can investigate. There's arm wrestling. There's regular wrestling. There's wooden sword battles. There's other activities taking place throughout the camp as people eat dinner and then let off some steam after a long day on the road afterwards. So, but we'll stop right here for a second as you guys consider whether you want to go into your tents for the night or whether you want to investigate further. And we'll head over to Melody and Brother Byron, who are in the Reverent Wield itself. You make your way not more than a quarter mile into the Reverent Wield. For you, this might be one of the first times you've set foot. There's just, much like there was a little bit on the outside, you could feel it a little bit in the air, but once you step into the forest proper itself, there is almost like electricity. You can feel the magic. It is a magical forest. The trees are tall, and they're all healthy and sturdy, and they're very wide, just enormous trees that go up to the heights of 100, 200 feet. Now, to be sure, there are smaller trees as well, but as you enter into the Wield itself, there's a burst of wildlife. It's almost like you couldn't hear it on the outside, but once you step into proper, there's bird calls and movement through the undergrowth and cries of animals, different noises. It's just bursts to life. The forest is alive. And you come to a small camp. There's a small clearing. They had a little fire pit that's completely gone out at this point with some stones around it. There's some sleeping bags, backpacks, stuff along those lines that are kind of in the area. And Aranis says to you, make yourself at home. He walks off with the other 4 elves to talk a little ways away privately. Brother Byron plops down. He's got a sleeping bag and backpack and everything he needs for the night, so he just finds a spot next to the fire, well, the fire pit, and starts getting himself situated for the night.
I think I will pull out one of those books on Tarask I brought with me. Not that I don't know my own people's history, but a refresher might get me some sort of clue as to what we're walking into.
Sure. So you sit down and read. There is a little bit of sunlight still coming through, although it's getting later in the evening. They talk for roughly 10 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aranis and Vidania return, and the 3 other wood elves actually pack up their bags and head off down a path without so much as saying goodbye. And it's just you and Aranis and Vidania. Aranis says, I need to find tonight's meal, so I am going to head out to hunt. Do either of you hunt? Talking to you and Brother Byron. Brother Byron, what does he have for a weapon? A light crossbow. Sure, he'll go hunting. So he takes Aranis up on his offer. I'll be happy to join you. Mel, I assume you're going to stay there and read your book? Or talk to Vidania?
I think I'll try to talk to Vidania. That sounds more up my alley.
Okay. So the 2 of them head out. You are left alone with Vidania, who stands up and says, I must find some herbs for the meal. Would you care to join me?
That I could manage.
Okay. And so she goes out a little ways away from the camp and starts picking through various plants for various herbs and such. She can't help but making small talk with you. Where are you from? How did you get here?
Tarask, that was my interest in the Cinderwold. My people are friends with the orcs there, and we've tried to mend the relationships between our people.
Ah, mend, yes. Bring together, right?
You know something of healing, I think.
Healing is important. I feel the orcs try to heal their land like we try to watch over our forest.
When you heal, you can grow, which is what I hope to do between you and the battalion there. That you understand more are coming, and they may not understand your ways. Not that they mean harm, just that they aren't from here. They don't know.
Yes. Some soldiers can
I'm not
be
sure how many.
Ignorant. Not all.
Especially
But-
if they aren't around here. But yes, not all.
Captain
myself.
was good.
And the captain.
Yes. Good.
Amira is all things.
Yes.
Why did she let the Cinderwold burn?
She gave us free will. And
It was no mortal
Ignorant.
that burned the Cinderwold.
ignorant people welcomed evil into the world. And Amira let us make mistakes. And only when the mistakes threatened creation did she decide that she needed to help us. She tried to let us fix our mistakes because she had broken herself to give us free will. Yes. She agrees with herself at the end.
I've been to West Cauldron. There they worship the daughter of Amira, the judge.
I don't know of West Cauldron.
Points up the road. It's a ways past even Temerity, which I'm sure you know of.
Yes. So north.
It is. They do not worship Amira there. They worship her daughter, which is to say they know of Amira. They revere her, but the judge is what differentiates what is creation and what is mistake.
She looks a little confused.
Burning the Cinderwald was the frailty of humanoid belief. It's what mortals allowed to happen. The judge is the part of Amira that knows when to intervene.
I see.
But there must be... Even the part that causes destruction is part of her, too. Part of the people she made.
She thinks about that for a bit, and her Amiran is somewhat limited, but she tries to grasp a hold of what you're saying, and I think Amira is always good. But humans and humanoids and mortals, as you say, they found evil. It was part of creation that must exist for free will. So she created it for her mortals, and they used it for evil. That's what I think. And she smiles.
A fire destroyed the Cinder World. Can fire be used for good?
Yes.
Could this god be changed?
Which god?
The Ruin Lord who burnt the Cinder World. I don't know specifically who that is, but in vagaries.
I know about nature, not about the change of gods.
Nature of gods is the nature of people. You said that.
Yes. People used evil to create the Rune Lords.
Then maybe the purpose, these gods will change with their people?
We can hope.
Okay.
At that point, Aranis and Brother Byron come back with 2 large hares that they captured.
Some not so great herbs for me.
Well, you both were kind of talking more than you were really gathering herbs. It was a philosophical conversation more so than an herb gathering thing. But she knew what she was doing, and she knew what she was looking for, so she kind of picked for both of you and smiled at your efforts in a good-hearted way, not in a rude way. You make dinner together as a group. Aranis cleans the hares, puts them on spits over the fire as Vidania lights the fire and gets that going. There's good conversation about a little bit more philosophy, a little bit more about what you guys are doing from their viewpoint, where you're traveling and where you're headed and how does one become a Fist of Amira, that kind of thing. Where
I think I'm a little bit looser with these folks about where we're going and whatnot, as they won't be leaving this area. They aren't going to spill state secrets as easily as a traveling force of mercenaries will, or conscripts, as the case may be.
Yeah, that makes sense. The dinner is good. It's wild hare, and she picked some herbs that made up a spring salad kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a decent meal. It's good. The conversation isn't exactly flowing. There's a lot of uncomfortable silences. Even though
translation or
through translation and just
not willingness to.
Yeah, there's only so much we're going to reveal to you. We're wood elves, and this is our home, and you are in it. There's just a point where I'm not going to share too much more information. But if you'd like to try to make a persuasion check to learn more about Aranis or Vidania, I can certainly give you more information about them with a successful persuasion check.
I'm curious what they tried to heal the Cinderworld. Because I'll be traveling past there, and it's just been part of my heritage. I'm curious what has been tried. And also, maybe what Ruin Lord was behind it, if I can find that out.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check.
I've got a 14.
Okay. You notice that Aranis doesn't give out a lot. How did they try to heal the Cinderworld? That was the druid leaders of our people, much beyond me. I am just a young scout. I do not know. You don't know whether he's given you the truth or whether he just doesn't want to reveal the information to you with your role. Vidania just doesn't know. She's too young and too inexperienced to know. You do learn through talking to her throughout the evening that she is a druid, and she just had her ceremony to join the druids of the Reverent Weald this past year at her coming of age. And she has a soul shard, was given to her by one of her elders who travels outside of the woods, because she has never been more than a couple 100 feet outside the Reverent Weald herself. Unless you have something else. The evening slowly winds down and you get yourself comfortable for bed and retire for the evening. I will switch back to the other group. Back at the captain's tent, the captain has retired for the evening. Tavis, Milldown, Sergeant Tavis, is still hanging around the area, both guarding the entry to the captain's tent so that no one can get in there now that he's called it a night. He seems to also be in charge of making sure who enters and who doesn't. What is everyone doing here around 8:30 bells in the evening?
Duke will return back to the wagon, check on the animals, and probably spend the quiet time examining his staff and dagger.
You have learned when you touch it, the runes glow. Okay. You have learned how to control that through your study over the last day and a half. You can allow the runes to glow, or you can keep them completely dark if you needed to do so through your attunement to this weapon.
While we were traveling, had either Alder or Gabrielle or anyone actually, been able to do any translation or deciphering or any ideas?
Yeah, the translation is gibberish because of the fact that it's written in code, which we've talked about.
Oh, that's right.
So the code needs to be broken. With the amount of time you've had to spend on it so far, this code is a long way from being broken.
All right, that's fine. And then I'll just spend part of the time just getting used to and accustomed to it. So I'll be practicing and doing little drills just to kind of ease the mind and prepare for an evening.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm looking through he said they had a small library of some books here.
Only in the captain's tent, which is closed for the evening. But
Wagon has some.
Our wagon does have some books that Mel and you picked out when you went to the library of the academy and checked out a few before you left. So pick a book title and make yourself happy.
Well, on that note, I know that we were wondering how to break the cipher on this thing that he got. I'm sure I looked for a book on just such a topic of common and rare ciphers and keys and how to decode things, and I'm looking through a book of something like
ciphers. That sounds good.
Alder's heading back to the tent to spend some time praying to Amira, getting some rest, resetting spells, such.
Yes. Tomorrow is Veil Day, which it's analogous to like a Sunday in our calendar. So Veil Day is her holiest day of the week, where people celebrate the creation and implementation of the veils, which held all the gods push them back into the Ember, which is the name of the other planes of existence in the world. So you can certainly do that. You're getting ready. I'm sure there are prayers on the evening before Veil Day, and you'll go through those and pray those.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabrielle?
I guess it's more appropriate just to get ready to settle down as well. It'll all be different when Mel comes back. She's the only party girl here.
Indeed. Okay.
Yeah, for now. I guess some martial exercises before we go to bed, just because Marduk is up doing it. Well, might be doing it privately, but with his...
I think he's outside one of the tents.
Yeah, it's a spear, so I need space, so I would be definitely out and about.
I run some practice drills of my own.
Eventually you guys tire yourselves out through your practicing and your meditations, and you find yourselves ready for bed. 9 bells comes, then 10 bells, then 11 bells, and most of you are probably sleeping by the time 11 bells strike. And so it goes, where the evening kind of fades towards midnight. Grodor, a few minutes before midnight, which you don't really know what time it is overall, but just saying it does happen a few minutes before midnight, you fall into a dream. It's not a typical or ordinary dream. It's definitely a dream being sent by your patron.
Uh-huh.
You see these creatures bursting forth from the earth exactly where the soldier had fallen earlier in the day. They're small, fey-like creatures, and they're stocky, and they have just these rough white beards and mustaches and shocks of hair that come out from these red caps that they wear that are dripping with blood. these creatures march into the reverent wheel. And you can tell they're marching right towards the camp where Melody and Brother Byron are staying. They're overly large sickles glinting in the moonlight. And then you hear your patron's voice. One word.
Urgent. Go.
And you wake up. Well, thanks everyone. A great job. It was a role-playing heavy evening, so lots of great role-playing. Appreciate the enthusiasm that you all tackled your characters' personalities with. And thank you to the listeners. Appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. Hopefully you got a lot of good backstory information tonight and enjoyed it. And we'll see you all next week.
Good night, all.
Thank you for listening to Knights of the Night Actual Play Podcast. If you'd like to send us a question, comment, or feedback, you can reach us in a number of ways, including Twitter @KOTN_podcast or by emailing us at feedback@KOTNpodcast.com. And don't forget the iTunes reviews. We also have a Facebook page which can be found at facebook.com/KOTN.podcast. While on Facebook, you can join like-minded folks at our fan page at facebook.com/groups/KOTNfan. And lastly, there's our blog at KOTNpodcast.com, where there's an Amazon link on the right-hand side. For those of you who'd like a more steady way to help us pay the bills, or if you live outside the U.S., you can help by donating to our Patreon page at patreon.com/KOTN. And please remember to join us next week for more mystery and adventure.
Hi, I'm Mike, playing Marduk, a male half-orc fighter and recent graduate of the Academy and New Fist of Amira.
Amira.
And
You got the Scott disease there, buddy.
I even spelled. All right. I'm going to change how I spell this.
You look into a mirror. That's how I remember.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And I have 5 fate points, is what I kept expecting back then. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know how many fate points she would have. She's got a lot of powers already.
Everyone could say, "Ooh, I have 1 inspiration."
Inspiration, yeah.
I do have 1 inspiration.
But we're not going to go through everyone and announce that again. If he's not on mute.
He might be double muted.
Lord knows I've done that before.
Double muted as in also in Zoom as opposed to just your...
That happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a headset that he mutes, and then... Oh, I thought I rolled a 3. It was Jim's 3 that I saw earlier. That was higher up.
Drenna, Drenna. Hotspur, Hotspur. Yarvis, Yarvis. Pen letter.
I can do some beatboxing if you want.
Oh, hell yeah, man. You can dance. Everybody have your hands. Fair enough.
It is the safety dance.
Song for everyone to get together under.
Other titles for the episode available for voting on the Facebook fan page were Amira's Fist Must Not Be Idle, Latrine Duty, The Magic is Just Too Evil, Mercy is Its Own Reward, Do You Feel Something Will Happen? And A Bridge Too Far.